Well, good afternoon. How are you? Welcome to this Google Digital Garage training session, all about how to go about building engaging presentations. My name's Christine, and I'm one of the trainers here on Google's free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. An honour, actually, that I've had since 2015 when I first joined the program. I'm a marketeer by trade. I have been working in marketing since before digital was even a thing. And I've been privileged I learned my trade in some of the world's biggest companies and have spent, well, pretty much the last 10 years or so working with smaller organisations, entrepreneurs, startups, charities, you name it. I've been lucky enough to help them on their journeys. So alongside me today, I have our wonderful moderator, Annie. Now, Annie is also one of our incredibly experienced Google Digital Garage coaches. She's been on the programme almost as long as I have, and she is there interacting with you today. Some of you will have already met her in the chat. You can identify her as moderator. First up, she's called Annie. Secondly, she has a little blue spanner next to her name. That spanner is basically shows that she is the one in charge. Annie's going to be posting you some useful links. She'll be answering any questions that you might have. And she's also going to do her best to keep me on track with timing and getting things moving. If you want to join in that chat and speak to Annie, I thoroughly hope you do, because she is an amazing resource here for you today. You're going to need to be signed into your YouTube account. So if you're not already, pop up to the right-hand side and sign up or sign in to YouTube, whereby you will be able to join in that chat. It'll take you 2 seconds to do it, really quick and easy, all free to do. Sign on up and then you'll be able to join in that chat. So if you have any problems at any point in viewing the webinar, best thing to do is to just refresh your page. We find a little bit of turn it off and turn it back on again seems to work wonders for most problems. What I am going to do is, as Annie will be answering questions as we go through. It's not the most technical of topics, but any kind of style questions or any questions that come up on what we're talking about today, do get those into Annie. And what she'll do is she'll share some of your questions with me, and we'll pause as we go through. And if there's a question that she thinks would be great for the whole group to hear the answer to, she's going to fire that over to me. Now, so you do know, we're running this Google Digital Garage virtual training as part of our broader offering of courses. So if you want to check out our schedule of upcoming webinar training, see the information on that. It's in the description below. That'll link you through to our website and you can see what else we've got going on. All right, then that's the housekeeping done. Let's take a look at what we're going to be looking at around about how to go about building those engaging presentations. So the first thing we're going to look, it's almost a case of, rather than jump straight in to creating a presentation deck, I want to do some thinking before we do. So we're going to look, it's almost a before, during and after, I guess, process today. So before you start, I want you to think about and do some planning, how you're going to approach that presentation. Think about what you want to achieve. And then when you get to the second part and actually create the presentation itself, you'll be able to craft it really beautifully in order to create something that you can be really proud of and that can really help you to convey your message. And then in the final section, which I'm going to let you in on a secret, is pretty much my favourite section of any of the Google Digital Garage training we do, we're going to look at some of the skills that anybody can work on. Anybody can develop their presentation skills. I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm going to look at some of those skills and how you might look at developing those as we go through. Now, just one other thing that I hope you find today's webinar helpful. Lots of people who join this webinar do so because they're looking to improve their career. Because in order to progress in our careers, we do have to be able to present ourselves well. So if you want, I just wanted to let you know that if you want to, we have Google offer a free, flexible online training program. They offer a number of them actually, called the Google Career Certificates. And they're to help you, they're designed to help you to earn job-ready skills So high growth, high demand careers such as IT support, project management, data analytics, user experience. All of these skills, these careers are ones where we don't have enough people with the skills to meet the demand at the minute. So if you are looking for work or wondering where to go next, you don't need any relevant experience. You don't need a degree or any particular level of qualification. And the best part is that here in the UK, you can access the Google Career Certificates via free scholarships from selected partners. So if that sounds of interest to you, after this session, hopefully, don't go off just now, you can head over to goo.gle/career search UK, and he'll pop that link in the chat for you as well. But it's a really interesting place to go if you are looking to develop those skills and show prospective employers that you are a kind of lifelong learner. Now, what else are you going to need to know? The other thing that I will say is that just reminded myself, if you want to, we're going to leave this webinar live for you till about lunchtime tomorrow. So you will be able to come back and re-watch any of this webinar. So if you did go off now and look at that Google Career Certificate, you can come back and re-watch the webinar anytime in the next 24 hours or so. Alternatively, we are going to move at quite a quick pace. So if you want to come back and re-watch any of the sections, I would just make a note of the time code on the video, and that's going to help you to find the right place in the broadcast. To get back to it, just click on the link that you used to get here in the first place. All right, let's think about presenting and presentations, which is why we're all here today. And what I want you to have a think about is what makes a memorable presentation. You can pop any answers as we go through. Any questions I ask of you, pop the answers into the chat, let Annie know. But have a bit of a think, a reflect. And think about what you might think of as a memorable presentation. Now, a presentation might be memorable for a really positive reason. It might be that your life by the messages that they had, the information that they provided. That's fantastic. That's what I'm really hoping to inspire in you today. Sometimes presentations aren't so memorable for the right reasons. They might be memorable because, for instance, quite a lot of us will have had that lecturer who made slides with lots of words on them that was basically copied out of a textbook and then sat and read them to us all afternoon. And by the time they finished speaking, we've all dropped off. Sometimes they even turn their head and read off the screen. So all you get to see is the back of their head for the entire session. It's really important to reflect on good presentations and be wary of bad presentations, because what I want you to start to do, as I say, these are skills that can be developed. And I want your presentations to be memorable for the right reasons, that they're engaging, that they're informative, they're educational. So by starting to think and look for your own role models, I want you to start to identify those little bits of magic that make a presentation memorable for the right reasons. As I say, pop any that you can think of into the chat, and our Annie will let me know what you're thinking. So I mentioned a few reasons. There are tons of reasons that we might present. And presenting isn't just like I am today, popping up some slides and doing a training course. That's a great use for presentation. But pretty much any time that we want to communicate something, that we want to persuade somebody of something, or we want to inform or educate, we are presenting. Sometimes it's in a formal setting. Sometimes it's just us ourselves presenting. Job interview. You might be asked to do a formal presentation, or you might just be going in and from the moment you meet that person, you are presenting yourself. And so some of the skills we're going to talk about today are ones that you can use in everyday life, not just when you are asked to formally present. But that idea of formally presenting is something that a lot of us do really struggle with. As I say, it's not something that I want you to think is natural Good presenters are either naturally born or they don't have it. These are skills that can be developed, and I really want to help you develop them for yourselves today. So I want you to have a think. This presentation, I want you to start analysing presentations as we go through. All right. So I want you to have a think as you're watching this. What kind of presentation is it? Okay. I'm going to play her. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. We did test it, but I'm sure Annie will let me know if we can't. So give us a fingers crossed and let's have a listen.
What you're doing right now at this very moment is killing you. More than cars or the internet, or even that little mobile device we keep talking about, the technology you're using the most almost every day is this, your tush. Nowadays, people are sitting 9.3 hours a day, which is more than we're sleeping at 7.7 hours. Sitting is so incredibly prevalent, we don't even question how much we're doing it. And because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't even occur to us that it's not okay. So instead of going to coffee meetings or fluorescent lit conference room meetings, I ask people to go on a walking meeting to the tune of 20 to 30 miles a week. It's changed my life. You'll be surprised at how fresh air drives fresh thinking. And the way that you do, you'll bring into your life an entirely new set of ideas. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a TED Talk. In its basic form, the kind of presentation it was a TED Talk. Now, what's really interesting, I find, with TED Talks is the speakers, well, for a start, they're chosen because they know their subjects inside and out. But they have a really clear idea of an idea that they want to convey. They have a very clearly thought out path. And they don't actually normally use much in the way of traditional presentation aids. Sometimes they might have a picture appear behind them or a few words scroll past to highlight an idea or create an atmosphere. But most of the time, what you're doing is you're focusing on that presenter and the way that they speak. I mean, I think from this presenter, you felt very confident that she knew what she was talking about. She brought an interesting idea to the table, and I thought she was very effective at being engaging. We'll take a look as we go through about some of the ways you can develop those kinds of skills for yourself. So the first thing I want to think about is, rather than sitting yourself down to deliver a presentation, I want you to think about telling a story. Now, stories are pretty magical. Stories are the way that human beings best communicate with each other. Since our ancestors sat round a fire and probably argued about which shape they were going to make the wheel, humans have communicated through stories. Stories are entertaining. Stories allow you to bring your audience into your world. It makes it very accessible. Quite often with a story, we open up a little bit of ourselves. And whilst we are delivering some facts inside the flow of that story, because it's entertaining, because it's personal, because it is engaging, that those facts are easily absorbed by the audience. So when you're thinking about sitting down to craft your presentation, I want you to think about how you can present elements of your story. Story has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an ending. As does a presentation. We start with what we're going to talk about, then we'll go into the middle and do the delivery, and then we wrap everything up at the end. That if we can weave storytelling throughout our presentations, it's really going to help us. So I'm going to show you here 4 different types of story. Okay, these are 4 different types of story, are actually part of the work, adapted from the work of Christopher Booker, the book, The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories. The first type of story I'm going to think about, or ask you to think about, is an origin story. An origin story is probably the most straightforward kind of story, actually. It starts at the beginning and works its way through to now. Quite straight, linear fashion. So in this particular one, let's take a look here. Origin story. I started my marketing business with a laptop in my garage. That was the start. Work my way through that now I have workspaces in 30 countries across the world. Start at the beginning, work your way through. Very simple type of story. The future vision story actually flips that rather. The future vision story starts with kind of now and looks to the future. So for instance, here, this future vision story, my marketing business is growing and my goal, my future, what I can see in the vision is to have offices in 30 countries around the world. So it's almost the opposite of the origin story. Rather than telling from the past through to today, it tells from where we stand today and where we're going. Okay. Now, they're the two most basic kinds of story. If you are, the next kind of story is, again, telling the journey of how you got here, but a failure or success story. Often, if you want to demonstrate resilience or show how something came about through learning, failure or success stories are really engaging for people because we're telling them, this is what I tried, it failed. This is what I tried, it failed. And then this happened, and this is where I am today. So my first couple of attempts at starting my marketing business failed as I didn't have the right target market. That's the failure. I learned from my mistakes and now have offices in 30 countries across the world. And there's almost the thing there. And if I can do it, you can do it too. You can see how that could be really motivational for people. Okay. And then the next slightly different type of story is the realization story. Now, a realization story is all about having a problem, being stuck, and then bam, that eureka moment, that realization that changed everything. So in this particular story, realization, I had been in the finance industry for 15 years when I went to a talk on marketing strategies, and I realized I wanted to start my own marketing company and expand into different countries around the world. Can you see that's the same facts presented in 4 slightly different versions? So by almost changing the perspective, by changing slightly the order of the facts or the perspective of the person telling the story, you can actually highlight different elements in the facts and bring people in a slightly different way. As I say, it's worth thinking about, how you can arrange the facts into a narrative that fits what you want to achieve. So when you're thinking about different story types, well, how would that work in my business world? Say I had to do a budget report. Okay, so finance report. You might want to use, put it this way, over the last couple of years, numbers for lots of businesses have been all over the place. So maybe it would be a success or failure story. Well, this is what budget, we set out to do this rather than just presenting a spreadsheet with some numbers on it. Tell the story behind it. We started off with this plan. The world changed. Gas prices went up. Costs went up. So we had to change what we were doing. And then this is the outcome that we got that maybe wasn't exactly what we set out to get. But you can paint it either as a realization. We realized we had to, that market wasn't open to us anymore. So we had to change. So you can actually craft the story to be able to really explain what was going on behind those plain old numbers. Say I had a company and I wanted to bring new staff in. An origin story might be really interesting for new people coming into my company. This is where we started and this is how we grew and this is where we are today. Making somebody feel part of the wonderful place that you've managed to create and really buying them in so they understand the significance around where you are today. Maybe you've got an idea that you want to pitch, or You want to try and persuade somebody that you're the person that's going to be great in their organisation. If you're going to do that, well, maybe a vision story, what the future looks like if your idea works. If it's an ideas pitch where you've got a new product that you want to sell to the market, or you've got investors that you want to persuade to come on board, it might be a realization or even a failure or success. We tried this and we tried this and we tried this, and this is the new idea, and this is what's going to work. So you can really see, hopefully, that you can use different kinds of stories to help you to bring people into your world, bring different, what could be seen as quite boring if somebody just reads from the slides and shows the numbers. Bring them to life by giving the context to those facts. So, we're thinking about our story. I've said that, arranging the facts to fit a narrative is going to be something to do. Well, the next thing to think about then is, okay, I've got all these facts. I can think about different stories. What am I actually trying to do? What's the point? What's the goal? What am I trying to achieve? So before you start putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and building those presentation slides, I want you to think about, well, why am I doing this? There must be a reason you're presenting. Do I want to get the job? Do I want to secure the funding? Do I want to persuade people to try this? Or, what is it? After your presentation, what is it that you want those participants to do? So, for instance, in the TED Talk, the goal was to get people to consider a walking meeting, to consider a different approach. So what I want you to do is think about that goal, and then at every stage, I want you to check back in with your goal. Is what you're saying bringing people, enhancing their understanding of what you want them to do? Or does it detract from it? Anything that detracts from what you're trying to achieve, you probably want to think about leaving out. So when you understand what it is you want to achieve, you then start to think about the structure of your presentation. So outlining your structure to help people to understand what the goal is and think what you want them to think. So think about, what do you want them to think? What in that goal, what's going to help you achieve that goal? People attend presentations to obtain information, but how do you influence your audience? What thoughts do you want them to take away? It's not just facts. You want them to think about things. And what sometimes happens is you can craft moments in your presentation that really get people to think about a topic, line the facts up and come to a conclusion. Hopefully you can craft those facts in such a way that the answer almost becomes obvious to the person themselves. That audience on the receiving end, you craft your facts in such a way that, they do think that you're a great person to be able to go ahead and do that job. So think about crafting a few moments. It doesn't have to be every single slide, but almost shaping things to conclusions as you go through. If we have X, Y, and Z, well, the answer must be. But allowing people the time and the space and providing with the information so that they come to the conclusion themselves is a really strong way to really deeply ingrain that goal in them. And one thing that works really well when you are presenting, because when you're presenting, you are communicating with people. And one of the strongest drivers to even the most robust of business people is emotion. If you can make somebody feel comfortable when they're listening to you speak, they are going to be more likely to absorb what you're saying. If you can make them feel confident and relaxed, maybe it's about using humor, lighten the tone, make them relax, make them feel comfortable. That makes them more open to your message. No doubt about it. If you come across as personable, then that message is going to be more, those people are going to be more open to those messages. If you've got a really dry topic, lightening it, building a connection with the bit, which is where the stories come in, opening up the facts and helping people to feel something. There was some amazing research a little while ago, and it was when people were watching, it was actually video produced by various charities. People would click to donate at the moment that really tugged on the heartstrings, that moment of greatest emotion. Or so it was either made them feel something emotionally, it made them angry, or it made them sad, or it made, anytime you could really bring those emotions out, that's when people were most likely to take an action. Being personable, face to face, that might be using eye contact with people. We'll talk about this kind of presentation technique as we go through. Online, to be more personable, if you guys are putting in comments, I'll use your names when I respond to your comments and questions. It makes you feel that your contributions are being noted, and that this is, rather than just me talking at you, this is a really collaborative affair. Now, people aren't going to take away every single word and every single fact and every single thing you present. So when you're crafting your presentation, I want you to think, if they can only take away one thing from today, what will it be? It's going to be very closely aligned from what you want them to have in your goal. They're going to forget so much of it. Keep thinking back to that goal and reinforcing what it is you want them to know, and don't tell them tons of things you don't want them to know. Now, what's quite interesting about this session today is, because I haven't met you, and I can't craft this presentation to exactly, there are so many different things you might want to take away. So the approach we've taken when we've crafted today is to try and give you a strong central narrative, and then try and give you enough different ideas that one of the ideas is going to stick. So for me, what I want everybody to take away from this session, probably the central thing, if you could only know one thing from today, I'd want it to be that presentation skills are things that can be learned, things that can be improved, whether it's the technical side or the kind of person side. The central thing I want you to take away is that we can all improve them. Good presenters are made, they're not just born. Okay, the TED Talk, it was super clear. The presenter wanted us to take away the need to be more active and build in that activity into our day-to-day lives. So think about, if they could only take away one thing, what would it be? And make sure you're reinforcing that as you go through. So when it comes to now, I want you still not quite putting fingers to keyboard. This is a stage that I often do with pen and paper, post-it notes. And what you want to do is now be thinking about those big chunks of time, blocking out some time for your beginning, your middle, and the end of your story. Now, although this looks like it could be a 7-stage process, it's not actually. What we have here is, along the top, we have that beginning, the background, the problem versus solution, which is your middle, and your conclusion, which is your end. Problem versus solution is really interesting. It's a concept we use quite a lot in marketing. If for a presentation or any kind of communication to really hit home, you want to be identifying the problem that your audience cares about, the problem that they have that they care about, that you have a good solution for. If it's in marketing, as I say, that could be, they're always running late, so you get them you have a watch that keeps them on track. There's going to be something that with the walking meet, and the problem was that people were sitting on their tush too often. And the solution was to get outside, get some fresh air, do the walking meetings. So be thinking about that idea. Consider what problems your audience have, and then how you can craft your solution to really make it feel to them like a natural step that it would take. And in order to underpin that structure, the beginning, the problem and solution in the middle, and then the conclusion at the end, the steps should go: research first, research what the problem is, research what your solution can do for them. Then plan it all out. This is where I'll use post-it notes and say, right, we're going to take 2 minutes to introduce ourselves, 3 minutes to introduce the topic. Block it out and chunk up your time. Right, we've got 20 minutes in total. How are we going to use that to best effect? And it's only at that point that I would actually sit down and work on the design. Okay, so all of that pre-work means that when you do get to building your presentation slides, it should work really easily because everything is already blocked out for you. So I want you to do a little bit of homework, all right? What I want you to do over the next couple of days is practice telling stories, all right? So you might have an audience at home that you can use. If you're a bit shy to do this yet, you might want to do it for the dog or for the cat, or even record yourself and take a look back. But tell a story. Set yourself a timer. Spend a couple of minutes and tell a story. Then I want you to reflect on it. Think about it. Then I want you to think about telling a story and the same story, the same facts in a different way. And if you don't know what story to tell, it can be the story of how you got up and got yourself ready in the morning. All right? It doesn't have to be some, deep, persuasive argument. Practice. Play around with the different ways of telling your story. Tell it as a future vision, tell it as an origin. To get here this morning, I went to the kitchen, I popped the kettle on and made a cup of coffee. I did this, and this is where I am. Flip that around. Do it as a realization or a success and failure. My success and failure, I went down to the kitchen, I put on the kettle, and then I realized I'd run out of coffee. So my success came because I made myself a cup of tea instead. Or I remembered that I had these emergency coffee stash somewhere. Think about spending a little bit of time over the next few days telling stories and see how you can craft any facts into a narrative. It's good practice for when you need to tell your own story. Okay. Right, I'm going to check in just quickly with Annie. And Johnny says, what's the best story you've listened to? Actually, there's something about sitting in that atmosphere around the crackling fire with the stories that you heard before. You know the answers to, the endings to quite a lot of them. But then watching professional storytellers bring them to life is absolutely amazing. All right then, great question. If anybody else has any great answers for Johnny, why not pop those into the chat as well, and then we can take a look at the best stories that you've ever listened to as well. I would throw that question back to you, Johnny, as well. Let Annie know what's the best one you've ever had. All righty, I want to take a little bit of time now, just a quick chunk of time on the actual technicalities of how to go about pulling together that presentation. We've got our beginning, our middle and end. We know what our goal needs to be. We know what we want to achieve. Let's look at a few ways, some of the tools you can use to help you to tell that story. Okay. So I'm talking about tools here. Before you launch into designing the presentation, there are considerations to choosing your tool. The first thing is the audience. Who are you trying to present to? And, how many people is it? What do you want to achieve? If it was a job interview or maybe a performance review, you might only be speaking to a very small, one person, 2 people, a small panel. A business meeting or a sales pitch, you might have a slightly bigger group. You might have 10 people, all with slightly different needs. If you're doing, for instance, trying a sales pitch to somebody, you might have in the room the person who has the money, but also the person who specifies the products that are used from a technical point of view. And you're going to need to make sure you meet the needs of all the people there. Okay. So think about the messages that you're trying to convey. Do different people all need the same information? Or do you have, a bit like we do today, I don't know for sure what your knowledge is, where you've come from. What it would be great to do is get some of you, but what I try to do is make sure I give enough interest that everybody will take something away. And the final step when you're thinking about what tools to use when you're presenting, is there any technology that would enhance what you're trying to say? Don't just reach for the technological solution straight away. Sometimes the best presentation is to get everybody to focus on you and what you're saying. For something that's quite technical, you might want to engage more of the senses, something to watch, something to listen to, something to read, something to look at. Okay. Don't try and do all of those things at the same time, but, do you have access to a computer and a projector? Do you have one of those old-fashioned acetate slides? Do you have a swirling screen? Can you put pictures up? If you think about what's actually available in the venue you're going to that could help you to present. And also, when you're thinking about an online presentation like ours today, think about ease of use. Think about, are you going to be able to share a screen? Are people going to be able to look at your slides as well? And that's when we come down to slide, because you do not have to build a presentation slide deck in order to present. Okay. We'll look at some of the other different kinds of ways you could do it, but then we are going to take a look at the tools you could use to build a presentation. In terms of different things you could do, think about what you're trying to do when you're presenting is communicate information to get people to think along a certain path. Lots of different types of aids that you could use. And we've popped a few up here. So Mural is a tool that you can use to collaborate online. It's great for doing things like having boards and putting Post-its on them. And rather than doing that face-to-face in person, different people can do it remotely. You could have everybody sitting in the room, and rather than having to old-fashioned, we used to write on a Post-it and come up and stick it on the wall. You can get them doing that from their own devices. So Mural allows collaborative working during your presentation, which if you're trying to do something a bit more workshop-y, a bit more interactive, might be a great idea. Canva is a great tool for illustrating what you're doing. So it might be that instead of formal slides, you just want to have a few key images, or almost a meme style display behind you. If that's the case, something like Canva can really help you do that. Slido allows you to run live polls that your participants can interact with you in a poll on their own device as you go through. You sign up to the tool, they have a QR code to snap or a URL to enter, and then they can participate live in the polls. You can even have the results, if you're brave, the results going onto the screen live behind you. Or you might decide not to use any tools at all. Then the focus will be on you. Then the focus will be completely distraction-free. But you've got to make sure you can keep their attention. Whatever tools you choose to use, make sure you know how to use them. Make sure you've practiced with them in the days before. And think about what you will do if the main method fails. Do you have a backup plan? How will you handle it? Stuff goes wrong in our sessions all the time. The number of times that the sound doesn't work in the video and I basically have to explain what the video just said. So think about what you'll do when things can and do go wrong. If you want to build a formal presentation like the one we're using today, though, all you need to do so is a device connected to the internet. It might be a laptop, a tablet, even a mobile phone nowadays. You can look at the ways to go about it. So different software, different programs available. The one we use is called Google Slides. You can imagine we'd use the one from Google. It's online, it's great for collaboration, and it's free to use. You might have heard of PowerPoint. PowerPoint is Microsoft's version of the almost exact same thing. The full version comes at a cost. You have to buy a subscription or a license, but they do have a cut down online version that you can use for free. Prezi has animations. It's great if you want to create something that's beautifully animated or goes maybe not in such a linear fashion. And if you are used to using the Apple universe, then you may already be familiar with Keynote, which is Apple's version of Slides and PowerPoint. They all got their differences, but there's a lot that's similar between them. So in terms of just showing to you, as I say, Google Slides I've already mentioned. It's great for working on a presentation with other people, collaborating. You can log in from wherever, so long as you've got a device and internet connection, you can get into your Google Drive and find your Google Slides. You don't have to carry around a flash drive. You don't have to worry about leaving it on the train and forgetting it, because wherever you have an internet connection and a device, you'll be able to log into your slides, which does mean that you have to make sure that you've either downloaded a copy to your device or that you know you're going to have good internet connection when you get to the venue. All right. So there are a couple of, in terms of making sure you are happy with going to a venue and delivering your presentation, think about that idea of backing up. Similarly to most, if you've ever used, word processing software or a spreadsheet, you'll feel this interface, this navigation to be fairly intuitive, I guess. The first thing to do is to customize how your presentation looks. Easiest way to do so is to choose a theme that already exists. I always choose my theme before I build my slides, before I put the content in. Because sometimes if I were to switch from this theme to this theme, you might find that things go a little bit wonky if you change mid-flight. So I find it easiest to choose my theme, make sure I'm happy with it, and then it applies a consistent look and feel across every slide I create. They control the headings, they control the different types of, titles and the fonts and what the bullet points look like. All of that's all handled for you. But maybe you want to take that on a stage and look at customizing. For is if you have maybe your own logo, maybe your own fonts that you use, all on brand with your company. If you want to produce a brand style, then bringing it through into any presentation you do is a great idea. You head to the master slide and you change your template. You can then save your template so you can use it time and time again with every single presentation you ever do. But just have a think, just because you can make something look really fancy and really whizzy doesn't mean that you have to. You don't want anything distracting from what you're trying to say. And this is your navigation. This is what should probably look quite familiar. All right. The navigation bar is across the top of the screen, and it allows you to control the features and functionality of the deck. So here we are. If we wanted to change the title of the document, first thing I would do, you just type over Untitled Presentation with whatever you want to call it, and that will then automatically save. You'll notice there isn't a save button in the navigation. That's because it saves as you go. And it always backs up, and it also keeps a version history. So if, for example, I decide that actually what I did 3 days ago was better than what I did today, I'll be able to roll back to that version. Here you can do things like go forward and back, redo and undo changes. You can add in elements, a text box or an image or a shape or a line. You can change the background. Here's that theme button again. Change the layout of the slide from an image slide to a header slide to a bullet pointed slide. And transitions are the wonderful things that what happens on the click as you go through. Do things appear one by one? Do they materialize? Do they fizzle out? Do they fly around the screen before arriving? Transitions are another of those things that just because you can make them fly all over the place doesn't necessarily mean you should. I've definitely been made to feel a little bit seasick when somebody's words and points have been flying in from everywhere, and it can be quite distracting. So when you're ready to go, you hit present, which is what I did before I started today, and you go from being in the navigation window to your presentation goes full screen and you're ready to go. One thing that's really important to think about, think back to that goal. What's the title of your presentation? It should fit in with what you're trying to achieve, fit in with that goal. How can you use just a few words to tell people what it is they're going to get from coming to your presentation? If that's on an online directory, what were the few words? Build engaging presentations. That's what we had today. That was enough to tell you, hopefully, enough about what you were going to get that you wanted to join me. And I'm very grateful that you did. Maybe it's in a conference program and you want people to appear. Maybe you just want a really good start to that job interview. Okay, and having a good title on that first slide is going to help you feel like you've made a good start and you're ready to go through. Excite people, intrigue people, make them want to attend. And I've said about that lecturer, remember, just putting up slides and reading off the screen. You want people to focus on what you're saying rather than just reading the slides. Not everybody finds reading big chunks of text easy. To be honest, if they wanted to just get the facts, they could go and research the facts or read the book. The reason they come to a presentation is to have them brought to life for them. So make sure you don't plonk up loads, big chunks of text. Use bullet points. If you do need text up there, use bullet points to make it much easier to digest. If you want to make it, if you want to communicate, then make sure you make it as easy as possible for everybody who can. And in terms of our absolute top tips, be considerate. There was an old phrase, death by PowerPoint. Don't use too many slides. Be considerate. Use fewer slides. Mix up the content. You know, you might use images. You might use a statistic. You might have just one or two bullet points. If you have the same type of slide, one after the other, people blank out. Think about the font you're using. Make sure it can be read at the back. Dark lettering on a light background is accessibility-wise tends to be the easiest for the majority of people to read. And think about changing your pace. As I say, if you have too much similar that keeps on going and people will drift off. People won't know where they are. So sometimes you might want to put up an interesting statistic and talk about it for a little while. The statistic grabs the attention and then you bring it to life. Other times you might chop through fact after slide after fact after slide at quite a pace. Varying things gets people to take notice, sit up and listen. You don't want them drifting off. You want to keep cutting into that attention. Okay. Few other things to consider when you're thinking about the online presentation. We've mentioned quite a few of them. Are you going to share your screen? In which case you need to make sure the technology allows you to do so. Do you want to be able to see the faces of your participants? If so, you're going to use more of a meeting software rather than a broadcast like we're doing today. How are you going to get audience to participate? Great if you can get your audience participation going on. How are you going to do that? Something that's super easy both for you to use, but for your audience to get onto. That's why we use YouTube. It's possibly the easiest thing in the world to just click on the link. YouTube appears and the magic happens. It's harder for us behind the scenes, but we have decided to make it as easy as possible for as many people as possible to participate. And then think about the cost. You know, is there a cost to the platform you're using? At the beginning of the pandemic, you know, people made these tools free, but I think there's a cost to a lot of them over a certain number of participants or over a certain length of time together. Okay. All righty. I can see, Franny, that we don't have any fresh questions. I don't know if we've had any answers to Johnny's question about the best story. Do feel free. We've got one more question session in about just under 10 minutes. So do feel free. It's your last chance to ask Annie anything you want to. And I've seen Annie present. She's really worth listening to when it comes to these presentation skills. All right, then. So let's take a look. We know what we want to say and how we want to craft it. We know how to build the slides or the aids to help us. But a successful presentation should offer more than just a consistent structure and traditional slides. Everything you are presenting, that's your facial expression, your voice, the way you convey the conviction, everything that somebody can hear or see or perceive about you and what's going on is going to feed into what they feel about that presentation. Okay. So I want you to think about how you're going to deliver your story. All right. Remember those best and worst presentations from the beginning. Normally the difference between the two, the best and the worst, is actually the person doing the talking. All right. And as I've said several times already, lots of people believe that good, confident speakers have some sort of natural gift. You either have it or you don't. And I am telling you right now that presenting is a skill that can be learnt and practiced and improved just like any other. I used to not be able to present. Years ago, I didn't think I had it in me. Now, I'm hoping that you'll now agree that that isn't the case, but I've worked at it. I've learned from some of the best, and I've made sure to listen. Anytime I now see somebody else speaking, see somebody presenting, I look to analyze it and see what I can pick from it. So the best kind of presenter you can be is one that wholly embodies who you are. All right. But one thing that really good presenters do is they don't always just present in the same way. They adapt to the audience they have. Okay. So that audience, is it one person? Is it 10 people? I present differently. We present the same content, but I will present myself differently if I'm presenting to a room full of business people or if I'm presenting to a room full of students. I'll change my manner. I will try to use language and examples that different people would understand. So that's why I'm forever asking for feedback from groups. Tell me about this. Have you contributed in some way? If I get answers from you, I can start to craft what I say. Now, one thing lots of people struggle with is big groups of people. All right. So if I have to present to big groups of people, I want you to remember that a big group of people, a big audience, is actually comprised of just individuals. So think about turning those huge crowds of scariness into individual conversations. Okay. What I quite often do if I'm presenting with a big room of people, to make myself feel more confident, there'll be somebody in the audience who's looking at me, and maybe they're smiling. So I'm going to deliver to that person for a little while. Just a few seconds, I'm going to talk and have a conversation, if you will, although they're not answering back normally. I'll talk to just that person. I can talk to one person at once. I can talk to two. Then I'm going to shift my focus and talk to somebody up here, then somebody up here, then somebody down here. If it makes sense to an individual, what happens is, what's great in that crowd situation is that person in the middle there that I'm talking to, actually, because it's a crowd, all of these people feel really engaged and included. So they start looking and smiling and nodding too. And then I start to relax and I start to enjoy it. And I start to believe that I really can do this. We have to fool our brains into thinking we can do this. When you're presenting online, the numbers might be huge, but I tend to treat it like it's just me and you here. I'm just talking at you. There's nobody else, and it's therefore, there again, a comfortable conversation that we can have. Audience participation is incredibly important for most presentations, okay? No matter how large or small, trying to find ways that audience can really feel invested in what they're doing is going to make that presentation stick for them. Get people being active, encourage them to participate, find a way that they can. If it's a huge group, individual conversations might be difficult, but we can do shows of hands. We can use some technology and bring in a slider. I can ask you a question, get you thinking about it and get you giving answers. Just don't talk at people nonstop. Build in breaks to get that feedback as well. If you do get questions, I need you to be appreciative. I love it when people ask questions. It shows you engage. It helps keep me on track, works out what's interesting, where I've maybe left something out. Follow up on them. Don't just make up the answer if you don't know the answer. It's an amazing opportunity to say, do you know what? That's an amazing question. I need to have a think about it and I'll get back to you. Or why don't we look up the answer together? Or I don't know, but I know somebody who's going to know. Let's make contact with them there. Don't make up an answer. Too easy to check with Google around now. You can just look it up. And when somebody is talking to you, Don't just be thinking about the next thing you've got to say. Really engage when you're getting in those questions and active listening. Acknowledgement is great. What I do is if somebody in the audience asks me a question, I hear the question, I repeat it back to them. That repeating it back does two things. One, three things actually. It checks that I've understood the question correctly. It tells everybody else in the room who maybe couldn't hear what the question was. I repeat it back. It makes sure everybody else hears it. And the third thing that's most important, it gives my brain time to catch up and lets me start to think up the answer. Okay, so repeat the questions back. Really important. Do not avoid audience participation. It is one of the secret ingredients to having a really successful presentation. And don't just try and cram as much as you can in. Okay, think about tailoring the content that you've got. We've said, tailoring that story that you tell to be relevant to the audience. If I'm talking to a bunch of students, I'm going to use examples that are relevant to them. If I'm talking to a group of dentists, I'll try and use examples that will fit in with their world. I'm going to try and tailor what I say, tailor which parts I highlight to make things as relevant as I can for that audience. If you find yourself struggling to remember what to say, I always use my slides as prompts. I don't want a script, I just want a few prompts, okay? So have 2 or 3 key points prepared for each slide. And then, once you start with those 3 points that you've remembered, your brain will catch up and you'll remember the rest of it and it'll all flow beautifully. And another secret ingredient is a pause. New slide comes up, you've no idea what to say, take a pause. Same as any slide comes up, even if you know exactly what you're going to say, take a pause. The pause does a few things. You take a breath in that pause naturally. Breath goes in, oxygen goes into your body, brain starts working better. The pause allows your brain to catch up. It also allows your audience's brains to catch up. So it's an amazing way to recall those key points and give your audience that little bit of space as well. Your voice is a powerful weapon, so adapt it depending on the situation. Change the volume. Key point, if I've got something really important to say, I don't shout louder. I take my voice down. That makes people lean in. It makes them want to know more. Change your style compared to the audience. If I'm presenting to 100 people, I'm going to do it in a very different way than I will. Tone-wise as well, to just 2 or 3. And think about varying that pace. Varying that pace keeps things interesting. You want to not rush too much, but use your pauses. Don't be afraid of silence. Too often of us fill that silence with and ah and funny little noises or little vocal tics. Try and use silence instead and see how much more professional and polished it sounds. And the final secret ingredient is body language. This is how you stand, what your face is doing, how you move. Lots of people think that, there again, you just feel the way you feel. You can use your body language, fake it till you make it. Negative emotions, sad and nervous and untrustworthy, all have body language in common. We go into ourselves and make ourselves smaller. So roll back your shoulders, open up your body, make eye contact, take a breath. If we put our body into this confident position, then we are going to ooze confidence to our audience and we're going to trick our bodies into feeling confident. And at some point, that's what we're actually going to feel. Try it with power poses. Look up power poses on the internet. Power poses get your body chemistry, your testosterone and your endorphins working for you. Opening up your body, standing powerfully. Lots of speakers swear by going somewhere private and standing in a confident way. Do it while I'm talking to you. I've got 1 minute left. I've actually slightly run over, but Annie doesn't mind. For the rest of this presentation, I want you to stand up and power pose, hands on hips or arms in the air. See what it does to your body. Even doing those walking meetings, you could do a standing up at your desk for a bit every day. So remember, think about how you stand, think about how you move, and think about how you're going to connect with that audience, okay? Don't fix your gaze, move naturally. I was once told I had to stand still, but I stood still, I got rigid, it wasn't natural. Be yourself. And then practice. Talk out loud. That homework activity where you had to tell the story, record it. Then watch it back on silent so you can see how you move. Watch it back without looking at the video and just listen to how you speak. And pick up some things. Do you and ah? Think about what you can do, small things you can practice to improve your presentation skills. So remember, think about your audience, your voice, and your body language, and then keep practicing, keep improving. Everyone can improve. All right, Annie has told me to stop talking. We've got no more time for any of your questions. Thank you very much. I could see we had some great questions coming in, which I know Annie will have got onto. Next, step-wise, pop them into the chat. What are you going to commit to doing in order to improve from where you are today? One of those things might be to sign up for those free Google Career Certificate courses. It's a free resource. You can work at your own pace and help you to stand out to future employers in those job-ready skills. Head to goo.gle/career cert UK. Other than that, thank you so much for your questions and your time today. I hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope it's been a really useful dive into the wonderful world of presenting. And I do hope you are going to get out there and practice it. If you want more training from the Google Digital Garage, hit us up on our website where you'll be able to learn lots more. Only falls to me to thank you for joining us. Thank you to Sav behind the scenes. Thank you to Annie for being our amazing moderator and doing her best to keep me on time. I look forward to welcoming you back to another Google Digital Garage training session sometime soon. Have a lovely day.